I'm not supposed to exist. Not to them. Not to the men who lined that dusty training range with their cocky smirks and inflated egos. Not to the man who sired me and forgot I ever breathed. And certainly not to the institution that carved my family's legacy into granite one generation at a time. But I do. My name is Samantha Vale, age 37. Codename Echo. I've served 15 years in covert operations across 4 continents. I've ghosted out of interrogation cells in Syria, trekked through glacier caves in the Kamchatka Peninsula, and once infiltrated a North Korean bunker posing as a journalist. None of that mattered today. Because today I was standing on a SEAL qualification range in Arizona and no one recognized me. Not even my father, Admiral Gregory Vale, the Hammer of Hainan. The man who raised one son for the spotlight and disowned a daughter into shadow. He glanced up, squinting under the sun. I felt the moment he saw me, a flicker of confusion crossed his stone-cut face. Then he turned to the instructor beside him and muttered, "Who let civilians on base?" That hit harder than shrapnel. I stepped forward, the dust from my boots whispering defiance. Vale, Samantha. His jaw twitched. Nothing more. No shock. No memory. Just indifference weaponized as formality. The man beside him chuckled. A young SEAL, all muscle and no nuance. She's not gonna last 5 minutes on the line. Their laughter came in ripples. I've heard that kind of laughter in a dozen languages. It always meant the same thing, underestimation. And I learned early, that's a gift. I said nothing. Instead, I walked past the smirks and toward the weapon rack. Familiar steel glinted under the sun. M4s, SCARs, sniper systems. Then there it was, an old M21 sniper rifle, matte black classic scope, the weight of legacy. I picked it up, locked in muscle memory from Kandahar to Kiev. "Hey lady, this isn't a museum," one of them called out. I didn't respond. 1 mag, 5 rounds, steel target at 500 yards, wind minimal. Sun left side glare. I took my stance. Deep breath, elbow locked, heart rate steady. Trigger squeeze, crack. Dead center. Crack. Edge of the plate, 1 inch from the bullseye. Crack, crack, crack. The last shot sliced through the center hole I'd already made. Silence. Not respectful silence, stunned silence. Then someone whispered, "She just beat Larson's record." Another voice followed, low and almost reverent. "Did anyone see her patch?" They saw it. The ghost patch, black, no insignia, no rank, just the outline of a phoenix. It meant nothing in the public records. But to the right people, it screamed everything. Strategic Reconnaissance Task Force 9, disavowed, disbanded, but never forgotten. I turned. My eyes met my father's. He didn't speak. Not once. Not even when the commanding officer jogged up, breathless, and saluted me sharply. "Commander Vale, ma'am, we didn't expect you." The young SEALs blinked in unison. "Commander." I handed the rifle back to the rack and walked past them. No words, no smirk. Just the echo of truth they'd spend the rest of their lives trying to understand. Because I wasn't just his daughter. I was the black file under the Pentagon's highest clearance. The one who saved 3 ambassadors from a sinking embassy. The one who went dark for 8 months in Sierra Leone and came back with intel that reshaped the next 3 years of U.S. foreign policy. They didn't know because they weren't allowed to know. But my father, he should have known. Except he chose not to. My brother Eli was always the golden one. 2 years older, charming, athletic, photogenic enough to land a congressional recommendation by 16. My father called him the next McRaven. Eli's room was a shrine to military glory-framed certificates, shooting medals, even a scrapbook my dad made from his first airborne training camp. Mine was in the basement, literal not metaphorical. No posters, no pride, just silence. Mom died when I was 11. Cancer swift and merciless. After the funeral, my father buried himself in Eli's future and forgot I existed. I became the family's background noise, useful only for chores, inconvenient when seen. The worst part, I still wanted his approval. Even now, I wish I could say I'd let go of that. I left home at 17 with a duffel bag and an application to a civilian paramilitary academy no one in my family knew existed. 4 years later, I graduated top of my class in cyberkinetic warfare and disappeared into a unit that didn't have an official badge. I became what they needed, invisible, precise, and utterly replaceable. My name cycled through aliases. Sam Valen, Echo Niner, that woman from the Jungle Op. I didn't want fame, I wanted impact. But every year on Father's Day, I'd check the mail. One letter, one card, anything. Nothing ever came. 3 weeks before that SEAL range scene, my brother Eli made lieutenant commander. There was a big ceremony in D.C. My name wasn't on the list. I showed up anyway in a plain black suit and stood at the back of the room. No one noticed me, not even him. At one point during a cocktail hour, I heard him tell a group, my sister. She went into marketing or something, I think. That stung. I had 2 broken ribs from an op in Tunisia at that exact moment. That day on the range wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about something deeper, the quiet reclaiming of worth. The kind of truth that doesn't need applause, just acknowledgement. Or maybe not even that. Just air and my own breath. Finally, unburdened. 2 days after the shooting range, I received a message I wasn't supposed to get. It arrived through a secure line that hadn't been used since the Riyadh incident, burner-to-burner, a cipher code layered beneath 3 encryption shells. The only people who had the clearance to reach me that way were either dead decommissioned or part of the same ghost chain I was sworn to protect. The message was 5 words long, Eli. Alpha dossier, incoming breach. No context, no origin tag. Just the kind of breadcrumb that drops into your lap when someone with access is desperate or dead already. I stared at it for 10 seconds too long. My coffee had gone cold. The sun hadn't even risen. I was sitting in a rental apartment outside Flagstaff, one of a dozen crash pads I rotated through like a ghost haunting my own shadow. Alpha dossier. My pulse kicked. That file was buried metaphorically and literally. A top-tier, eyes-only black report tied to an operation called Starlance. It had been shelved after a joint NATO mission went wrong in the Balkans 6 years ago. 5 operatives died. 2 went rogue. The after-action was sealed in triplicate and buried in Geneva under UN jurisdiction. No one touched it since. Until now. And Eli, my brother, was somehow caught in the gravity of it. I didn't want to care. Not after he paraded his promotions like family heirlooms while pretending I didn't exist. Not after I watched him deliver a keynote about honor and loyalty and thank our father for everything like Mom never existed and I never bled for this country. But I cared anyway. Because underneath the resentment, under the bulletproof layers I'd wrapped around my heart, there was still a fracture shaped like family. And Eli might be a self-absorbed careerist, but he wasn't stupid. If his name was linked to Starlance, something was very wrong. I burned the message, scrubbed the cache, and booked a flight. Landing in D.C. felt like stepping into old bruises. Every corner of the city held memories, most of them sharp. I checked into a hotel under an alias I hadn't used since Iceland and started the crawl. First, I scanned military databases. Nothing official flagged on Eli. No sanctions, no court-martials, not even a whisper. That meant one thing, whatever was happening, was off-books, dangerous, and being covered up in real time. Next, I reached out to someone I never thought I'd call again. Kellen Drake. He used to run forensic data ops for the NSA until he got caught rerouting intelligence to a private security firm. He swore it was whistleblowing. The government disagreed. Now he freelanced mostly from behind 6 firewalls and a mountain of old grudges. I found him in a smoky bar in Fairfax looking like a conspiracy theorist who just crawled out of a war bunker. "You owe me 2 favors," he said without looking up from his tablet. "I need to collect one," I replied, sliding a USB across the table. He examined it without touching. "You're still running Phantom Ops." "Not officially." He snorted. "You never were you? Can you crack it or not?" He sighed, pulled a laptop from his duffel, and started typing. 10 minutes later, he leaned back and said, "You're not gonna like this." I already didn't. He turned the screen toward me. A classified memo, flagged urgent, from the Department of Naval Intelligence. The name on it, Lieutenant Commander Elijah Vale. The subject line made my stomach lurch. Request for interdiction, immediate containment of Alpha dossier leak category Omega risk level. They were preparing to pin it on him. I leaned in. Where was this routed? Pentagon server farm. Then bounced through a shell company in Ankara. And the shell, he hesitated. Gregory Vale's name is on the board. My blood went cold. Our father, Admiral Vale, the man who'd spent his entire life constructing a pristine empire of service and medals. The man who once said real power isn't inherited, it's orchestrated. This wasn't an accident, it was orchestration. They were setting up Eli to take the fall for a leak Dad's company had helped initiate. I sat back, heart pounding. That's when I understood this wasn't about Eli, not entirely. It was about Dad, about legacy, about burying anything that threatened his legacy, even if it meant burying his own son. And maybe that's where I broke. Not out of pity, not even love, but rage. Because I realized for the first time that all the silence, all the dismissals, all the years he ignored me, it wasn't personal. It was strategic. He didn't just forget me. He erased me. Because I didn't fit the story he was writing, because I was inconvenient. And now he was doing the same to Eli. I finished my drink and stood. Get me everything you can. Logs, routes, communications. Trace the shell firm. I'll settle your second favor after. Kellen raised an eyebrow. You going after the Admiral? I didn't answer. Because this wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a war. And I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting to end a story that was never mine, but one I was forced to live inside. That night, I parked outside Eli's townhouse in Arlington. The lights were off. His car wasn't in the drive. I broke in anyway. Some habits die hard. His place was meticulous, almost sterile. No photos, no clutter, no warmth. I scanned the rooms, noting surveillance gaps, probable hide spots, and comm lines. Upstairs, I found a locked cabinet in his office. 5 minutes and a pick tool later, I opened it. Inside a hard drive, a leather-bound field journal, and one surprising item, an old photo of the two of us, maybe 10 and 12, sitting by a lake. The only time our parents ever took us camping. My throat tightened. I didn't have time for sentiment. I took everything and vanished before the neighbor's dog started barking. Back at the hotel, I scanned the drive. Encrypted, deep layer, embedded with naval-grade tripwire code. If I mistyped the key 3 times, it'd fry. So I did what I always do. I called the one person who would understand the stakes because they'd once had skin in the same game. Her name was Mara Lynn, ex-Marine intelligence. Brilliant, dangerous, unapologetically bitter. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. She answered on the second ring. I thought you were dead. Not yet, I said. I need a favor. Silence. Then you in trouble. No, my brother is. And you care because... I don't know, but I'm in it now. A pause. Then she said, drop a dead letter at Grayson Park. South Bench, 1 hour. She hung up. Just like old times. I dressed in black, pulled my hair into a high knot, and stepped into the cold night. By dawn, I'd have answers, one way or another. And when I did, I was going to dismantle every illusion my father had built, starting with the truth he tried to bury under metals and marble. Because legacy built on lies is just propaganda in uniform. And I've spent my entire life in the shadows. Now I'm ready to burn them down. Mara didn't ask questions when she took the hard drive from my hand. That's why I trusted her. Some people are bound by contracts or blood. Mara and I were bound by shared dirt, the kind that sticks under your nails even after years of scrubbing. She led me through the back entrance of her condo, past blackout curtains and a maze of half-dismantled tech gear. The place smelled like solder and stale coffee. Home, in a way. She plugged the drive into her rig, fingers tapping with a precision that came from years of decoding enemy chatter and exposing ghosts pretending to be loyal men. Encrypted triple deep, she muttered, with a fail-safe that wipes if accessed from a flagged node. Her eyes narrowed. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. My brother, I said quietly. He's not as clueless as he acts. Mara didn't respond, just kept typing. She always understood that some silences weren't gaps, they were shields. After 15 minutes and one muttered curse, she cracked the shell. What we found wasn't just dangerous, it was nuclear. Operation Starlance wasn't dead. It had been renamed, repackaged, and now it was being run through a private firm called Aegis Meridian, contracted under the Department of Defense for Strategic Logistics Optimization. On paper, they managed drone deployments, resource shipping, naval route analytics. In reality, they were moving black market tech ghost personnel and intercepting whistleblowers. And the man who authorized the shell contracts? Admiral Gregory Vale, my father. I stared at the screen while Mara pulled up invoice routes, coded memos, backdoor communications. She found one signed by GVA-13, his usual signature block on covert ops dating back to Djibouti in '09. My chest felt tight, like someone had pressed a steel plate against my ribs. How deep is this? I asked. Mara clicked through one more layer. Deep enough to bury careers, maybe bodies. Then she paused. Wait, here. On the screen, a transcript of an intercepted call, time-stamped, 4 days ago. My father speaking to someone named Colburn. Use Eli. He has no idea what's actually in the file. If he leaks, it's deniable. If he doesn't, we contain it either way. I don't care. Just keep Samantha off this. Mara looked at me. I didn't flinch. My voice was steady when I said print everything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on Mara's couch, staring out at the empty skyline, a mug of untouched tea cooling in my hands. I kept thinking about that photo in Eli's cabinet, the two of us at the lake. I remembered the moment it was taken. He had found a turtle and wanted to keep it. I said we should let it go. He listened. That was before everything changed. Before Dad turned us into parts of his machine. I hadn't heard from Eli since breaking into his place. I didn't know if he was in hiding or already a pawn in Dad's plan. But I knew one thing: he wasn't safe. And neither was I. The next morning, Mara and I met with a contact of hers, retired Major Cole Henley. He had deep ties to internal affairs and a vendetta against Aegis Meridian after they blacklisted him over a contract dispute. He was the kind of man who kept folders in hidden safes and guns in cereal boxes. The kind who understood that justice in our world had to be handcrafted. He didn't even blink when I showed him the drive contents. "You're sitting on a damn warhead," he said, leaning back. "You know how many careers are tangled in this. Your dad's not just protecting himself. He's protecting a whole damn network." I nodded. "Then we burn the network." Cole raised an eyebrow. "That easy?" "No," I said. "That necessary." He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled a USB from his pocket. "Here, access logs from 2 months ago. Aegis Meridian made a deal with a Serbian arms broker. The same one from the Starlance op." My blood turned to ice. I thought he was dead. "So did I," Cole said. "Until now. We needed a plan. Not just to expose my father, but to do it in a way that couldn't be spun or buried. That meant public. That meant legal. And it meant using the one tool I'd never wanted to use again: my name. So I made a call to the Joint Military Oversight Committee, requested an anonymous deposition on record regarding financial misconduct and unauthorized covert operations. I included a partial copy of the drive, just enough to get attention, not enough to trace. Then we waited. 4 hours later, someone tried to breach Mara's firewall. 6 hours after that, Cole's backup hard drive went missing from his apartment, even though the door was triple locked and the security feed cut. That was when I knew. Dad had activated the containment protocol, and I had a limited window before either I disappeared or they made me disappear. I booked a secure interview with one of the last reporters I trusted, Isabel Chen from the Capitol Record. She'd covered war crimes in Sudan and corporate abuses in Venezuela. She didn't flinch easy, and she hated men like my father. We met in a coffee shop where the Wi-Fi was jammed and the exits were clear. I slid her a copy of the files. "You run this," I said, "and you'll need protection. But it's clean. The proof, the players, the money, everything." She opened the folder and froze at the top line, "Unauthorized Military Contract, GVA-13 Initiative." "Jesus," she muttered. "How deep does this go?" "Past the Pentagon," I said. "Into private war economies. They're using my brother as a decoy. And if they get away with it, I promise you the next whistleblower won't make it past customs." She looked at me, then nodded. "Give me 48 hours. I stood. "You've got 24. I hadn't told Mara everything. Not about the message I got. Not about the encrypted side note embedded in the alpha file that no one else had noticed except me. It was a voice file, labeled Artemis Echo. And it wasn't Eli. It was Mom. Not literally her. A recording. One she'd made before she died. One I didn't know existed. In it, she was speaking to someone, maybe a military counselor. Her voice was quiet but clear. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll tell Samantha the truth. That she was always meant to lead. That I kept her out of Greg's plans because I saw what those plans turned him into. He never wanted a daughter. He wanted a soldier. But she's more than that. She's the one who can end this. I listened to it twice. Then I saved it under my own encryption key. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel like a ghost. I felt like a reckoning. As the sun set that evening, I packed a duffel with burner phones, flash drives, a sidearm, and 2 passports. I wasn't running. I was preparing. The trap wasn't for me anymore. It was for him. And the metals he polished while the world burned behind him. They were about to melt. The thing about secrets is they don't rot quietly. They wait, coiled, patient, like landmines under polished floors until someone steps wrong and everything explodes. I stood in front of the Aegis Meridian data vault, dressed like a consultant badge, forged ID scanned. The building squatted in the Virginia Tech corridor, tucked behind a wellness center and 2 federal tax offices, like it was trying too hard to be invisible. But ghosts always know where other ghosts hide. Inside, the air hummed with chill and artificial calm. I passed through security like I belonged. The trick was never pretending to be invisible, it was acting like you had something more important to do than be noticed. Most people respect arrogance more than authority. My access got me to the mainframe floor. Past that, I needed Eli's hard-coded encryption key, the one I'd cracked only partially. The rest lived in a place I didn't want to return to our father's private archive. So I walked out. Not because I was afraid, but because the only way forward now meant going back. The Vale estate wasn't a house. It was a performance. Every hedge manicured, every room curated like a military museum crossed with a politician's Instagram feed. I hadn't been there in over 12 years. The last time I left with blood under my nails and my mother's voice ringing in my head. "You are not broken, Sam. You were born clean. Don't let him stain you." I slipped in through the service gate. The security system hadn't changed. Still running on a custom loop with a blind spot near the southern patio. Of course it hadn't. My father believed control was safer than evolution. His study was in the East Wing. Walnut desk glass cabinets and the same old bottle of scotch he pretended not to drink. I moved past it all and went straight for the grandfather clock. Not because it told time, but because it didn't. Behind it, a biometric panel. I placed my left hand on the scanner. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. My father never erased my access. Not because he forgot, he never forgets, but because somewhere deep down in the blackened corners of that tactical mind, he still saw me as part of his plan, as his failsafe. The wall slid open, revealing a hidden room, smaller than I remembered. Cooler. There were no photos, just files. Drawers labeled with single letters. And one drawer at the bottom marked C73, C for Clarissa, my mother. I opened it. Inside, sealed envelopes, microchips, an old locket, and a mission log from 1993 dated 2 months before my mother's cancer diagnosis. Except it wasn't a diagnosis. It was exposure. She hadn't died from illness. She'd been exposed to something during an overseas mission in Macedonia. A silent op under a NATO flag blacker than black, buried under medical jargon and fake autopsy reports. And the kicker, my father authorized it, knew the risk, signed the clearance anyway. There was even a memo she'd written begging him not to deploy her after intelligence flagged radiation spikes in the compound. She wasn't even in combat. She was there for negotiation support, a translator. But she was fluent in Serbian, disposable, replaceable, collateral. My hands shook, not from fear but fury. He didn't just bury the truth. He built his career on it. And the daughter who inherited her mother's fire, he buried her too. I scanned the chip and sent it to Mara through an encrypted Dropbox. Then I left. But before I did, I placed one item on his desk. Not a threat, not a warning. Just a photo. The one I'd taken from Eli's drawer, the 2 of us by the lake. Let him remember. Let him know this wasn't random. Let him feel the shadow breathing down his legacy. Mara called me 2 hours later. Got it. The chip confirms everything. They knew about the radiation, and they classified the exposure as strategic risk mitigation, meaning they accepted the cost. Meaning she said her voice low. They knew Clarissa Vale would die and they let her go anyway. Send it all to Isabel. Already did. We sat in silence for a beat. Then she added, "You okay?" I almost laughed. "No, but I will be when this hits daylight." The next morning, the story broke. Front page, full spread. Chen's article didn't hold back. The Admiral's daughter, covert betrayal, classified death, and the shadow network behind Aegis Meridian. The reaction was swift. Military press denied. Public officials deflected. Veterans groups demanded hearings. Anonymous insiders confirmed file trails. And through it all, my father stayed silent. But he knew, because I left one last message at his private Pentagon inbox. It read, "Legacy dies in silence. This is your echo." That afternoon, Eli finally called me. His voice sounded like gravel soaked in exhaustion. "You really did it." "Not yet," I said. There was a pause. "Then I didn't know about Mom." "I believe you. I should have looked deeper." "You trusted him. We both did." Silence again. Then, with the smallest break in his voice, "I still have the turtle from the lake." I didn't know what to say. I just closed my eyes and let the moment breathe. He added, "You think any of this can be fixed?" "No," I said honestly, "but we can make sure it doesn't happen again." "How?" "By making sure the next daughter doesn't get erased, and the next mother doesn't get silenced." That night, I returned to my motel room alone, turned off the lights, sat in the dark, not because I was hiding, but because sometimes you have to let the dark settle before you see clearly. In that quiet, I played my mother's recording again, not to relive it, to remember. Her voice soft but sure, echoing through that old speaker Samantha was always meant to lead. Not follow, not serve, not disappear. Lead. And now I finally was. Not in medals, not in rank, but in truth. You never really understand the shape of your name until you hear it spoken in a courtroom. It doesn't sound like yours. It doesn't sound like anyone's. It becomes something cold, something filed, something loaded with expectation and legacy and accusation. I sat before the Congressional Oversight Subcommittee on Defense Ethics, tucked behind a table that smelled like varnished judgment. A single mic, a half-filled pitcher of water, a nameplate that read Commander Samantha Vale Rhett, a title I hadn't asked for, one I had earned. But suddenly even that felt distant. Across from me sat men and women in dark suits, some fidgeting with pens, others leaning back like this was just another procedural footnote. A few watched me like I was a ticking device they weren't quite sure how to disarm. Commander Vale. The chairman began tone clip, "Do you confirm that the files you submitted, documents detailing financial fraud, classified cover operations, and the unauthorized use of lethal agents are authentic?" "Yes," I replied. He paused. "And you understand the implications of perjury before this committee?" "I understand truth," I said. A few heads turned. Pens froze mid-scratch. They didn't know what to do with someone who had no interest in being liked. For 2 hours, I laid it all out. Not just what happened, but how it happened. Who buried what? Who gained? How Aegis Meridian rebranded classified casualties as costs of strategic repositioning. How my father approved black budget lines under humanitarian cover ops. How my mother's death was quietly chalked up as coincidence to protect a program that had no right to exist. I gave names, gave dates, and I gave them the voice recording. My mother's last act of defiance from the grave. By the time I was done, even the staffers in the back had stopped whispering. I expected pushback. What I got was worse calculated lawyered silence. When the chairman finally spoke again, his words were hollow. "Thank you, Commander Vale. We'll take your statement under advisement. No immediate questions, no promises of follow-up, just bureaucracy pretending to listen." Outside, the sun burned high and unbothered. Isabel Chen was waiting across the street, notebook in hand, eyes sharp. She didn't wave, just nodded. A quiet show of solidarity. I didn't stop to talk, not yet. Because the committee wasn't the real arena. The press wasn't either. The real battle was still coming, and it was wearing 4 stars. 2 days later, my father requested to testify. Voluntarily. The announcement hit like a controlled explosion. He hadn't said a word since the files dropped. No press conferences, no statements, not even a lawyered denial. Now he wanted to walk into the lion's mouth all on his own. And I knew why. Because silence wasn't enough for him. He wanted to rewrite the story. He always did, They scheduled him for an afternoon session behind closed doors with restricted press, but someone leaked the transcript less than an hour after it ended. Mara sent it to me with one line attached, "He played it like chess." I read it in one sitting. He called me a brilliant but emotionally compromised operative, said I misinterpreted data in the fog of grief, claimed I had an understandable vendetta stemming from the tragic loss of her mother who served bravely under dangerous but fully disclosed conditions. He spun it like a Shakespearean family drama, cast himself as the aging general trying to balance duty with fatherhood, called the financial discrepancies poor oversight by third-party contractors, said Eli had accidentally stumbled upon a corrupted folder and overreacted. He admitted nothing, denied nothing, just framed everything as a misunderstanding born of loss. And the worst part, he sounded calm, reasonable. He sounded like the man America wanted him to be. That night, Eli called again. He'd read the transcript too. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm used to being edited," I said. "He made you look like a grudge with a badge." "Which is funny," I replied because I lost both. He didn't laugh. Neither did I. "What now?" he asked. I looked at the news playing silently in the motel lobby. A panel of talking heads was already dissecting the hearings. Words like rogue daughter distortion fabrication ran across the screen. What now? Now we stop playing on their field. The next morning, Mara and I held a private press briefing. Not official, not endorsed, but broadcast globally through independent channels. We didn't recap what had been said. We showed what hadn't. Liv screened encrypted server logs from Aegis Meridian confirming illegal contract dispersals. Played back the internal chatter from senior operatives acknowledging C-73 exposure risks. Released old footage of UN aid convoys rerouted through ghost zones with drone escorts. We didn't ask for judgment. We gave truth. And we did it without hiding behind committee seals or staged expressions of solemnity. The internet lit up. Veterans forums called for independent inquiries. Journalists who'd stayed silent started digging. Whistleblowers came forward anonymously backing our data. But most importantly, survivors reached out. Widows, sisters, daughters. One email read simply, "My mother died in that operation too. Thank you." That night, my motel door shook. 3 knocks, then silence. I approached slowly, gun holstered, but ready, peered through the peephole. "Eli." I opened the door. He looked older than last week. Not physically, just tired in a way only betrayal can etch into the body. "I'm in," he said. "In what?" "Whatever comes next." We didn't hug, didn't need to. We just stood there breathing in the weight of everything, because for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I was carrying it alone. 3 days later, we received a subpoena. Not from Congress, from The Hague. War Crimes Division. Someone was paying attention. Someone finally saw the ghosts. And this time, we weren't the ones vanishing. We arrived in The Hague under gray skies, the kind that made the world feel like a courtroom before a verdict. No ceremony, no press on the tarmac, just quiet, cold wind, and the knowledge that everything behind us was no longer ours to carry. Only what was ahead. Eli sat beside me on the transport van, his hands clasped so tightly I thought they might crack. I didn't say anything. He wasn't looking for comfort. He just needed someone beside him who'd survived the same fire. The tribunal was scheduled for 3 days. Closed-door testimonies, no cameras, no headlines, just facts, documents, witnesses. Everything that had once been a whisper now demanded to be spoken aloud. And there would be no rewriting this time. The judges had requested both of us appear, me as the key informant and architect of the exposure, Eli as the accidental witness turned corroborator, and one other name was on the list, Admiral Gregory Vale, my father. He had chosen to appear, not as a defendant, but as a witness. They couldn't force him to testify. He held too many shields, retired rank diplomatic immunity, 6 countries with something to lose if he spoke too freely. But still he came. Not because he wanted truth, but because legacy dies loudest when left unspoken. And he wanted the last word. The courtroom was clean and quiet, stripped of spectacle. No marble busts or flags, just black robes, sharp questions, and the cold clarity of consequence. I sat across from the panel, read my statement again. gave context to the documents, laid out how Operation Starlance evolved into something monstrous, how misused contracts turned into weapons, how Aegis Meridian didn't just bend the law, they erased it. Then I gave them what they hadn't seen yet, a file labeled Tantalus 2, buried deep in my father's digital archives. It wasn't about the Balkan op. It wasn't even about the radiation zone that killed my mother. It was worse, a contingency plan, designed in case public exposure ever reached him. It detailed media blacklists, pre-written talking points for defense secretaries, even sacrificial officers marked to take the fall. My name was listed. So was Eli's. We weren't just written out of the legacy. We were pre-selected as shields for it. I looked the judges in the eye and said, he didn't just build a wall of silence. He planned the bodies to lay in front of it. They didn't flinch. But their silence shifted. It felt heavier, more real. Eli testified next. He didn't cry, didn't rage. He just told the truth. About the cover-ups, the manipulation, the conversations he overheard when he thought he was just an observer. When he finished, they asked him one question. Why come forward now? He looked at me before answering, then said, because the only way to be free of a legacy is to drag it into the light and see what's still alive after. I don't think I've ever respected him more. Then it was our father's turn. He entered like a man checking the weather, measured, calm, utterly unfazed. Gray suit, no uniform, a quiet nod to the tribunal, a glance toward us, no recognition. He sat and waited. When asked if he accepted responsibility for the contracts and decisions detailed in the case files, he smiled. Not cruelly, not even smug. Just a faint, weary smile like the answer was too complicated for a courtroom. I accept that I did what I believed necessary for the preservation of national stability, he said, and I accept that history may choose to name that differently. He didn't deny. He didn't confess. He reframed, like always. But then the chief judge asked, and your daughter? A pause. Then, did you intend for her to carry the fallout? He looked directly at me for the first time in years. I intended for her to survive, he said. And she did. That was it. 4 words. Not remorse. Not love. A justification. And it was almost worse than denial. Because in that moment, I realized he truly believed it. That breaking me was training. That disappearing me was protection. That using me as a safeguard against exposure was love warped and weaponized. And maybe once I would have wanted to believe him, but not anymore. After the session, we were given 2 hours to submit final statements. Eli sat in silence. I went walking. The city was quiet, cobbled alive in a slow way, coffee cups, clinking bikes whispering past. And for the first time in years, I wasn't on the run. I was just walking. At the edge of a narrow bridge, I stopped. Not to think, but to feel, to let everything rise and settle. My mother's voice, the smell of pine from that lake, the crack of gunfire on the SEAL range, Eli's hand holding that photo. My father's silence. My own name being spoken in a courtroom without flinching. All of it, not as wounds, but as shape, as story. I returned and gave my final statement. It was short. I was never trying to destroy a legacy, I said. I was just trying to survive one. The cost of silence is too high, not just for me, for all of us. Justice doesn't erase damage. It just makes sure the next version of damage doesn't wear a badge. And I left it at that. 2 weeks later, the tribunal delivered its verdict. Aegis Meridian's contracts were frozen indefinitely. 3 senior directors were indicted under international fraud and obstruction statutes. The U.S. Department of Defense issued a statement acknowledging ethical oversight lapses and began internal investigation. My father, no conviction, no imprisonment, but his security clearances were stripped. His pension frozen under review. His name removed from the upcoming National Defense Hall of Honor ceremony. Officially, it was called an honorary withdrawal. Unofficially, it was a fall. Quiet, but permanent. And for a man like him, that silence was the loudest sentence he could receive. Eli went back to D.C., took a leave of absence, said he might write a book. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. We talk more now. Still not about feelings, but about music and movies we missed and the weird normal things families forget how to do. Mara disappeared again. She's good at that. Sends me the occasional encrypted meme. Isabel won an award for the story. She sent me a copy of the article in print. I keep it in the same drawer as my mother's recording. As for me, I didn't go back into service, didn't join politics, didn't start a podcast or tour as a speaker. I bought a cabin, northern Michigan, trees for miles, a lake nearby. It's quiet but never silent. I teach wilderness survival to women who've left bad marriages, burned careers, or just want to feel like their own breath again. No one here calls me Commander. They call me Sam. Just Sam. And when they ask what I used to do, I just say I worked in systems. And sometimes they ask what kind. I smile and say one's built to fail. They laugh. We build fires. We let the dark come without fear. Some names are written in stone. Some are erased. Mine was whispered, then carried, then reclaimed. Not for glory, but for truth. Because legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you choose not to pass down. And I chose silence no more.
Story 2. I received the message uninviting me shortly after they sent the invitation on a Tuesday. The envelope had the thickness cream color and gold filigree that you would expect from an Ivy League wedding or a senator's fundraiser. The front said, Bristow Family Reunion, Fairmont Hotel, San Francisco, August 15th, 7 p.m. I didn't open it. Not necessary. The name of the hotel was too familiar. It was listed under the Elite Partners Platinum tier on my tablet's client list. That was my electronic signature verifying the reservation on the contract. My cousin Olivia, who is always the unofficial family coordinator, buzzed a message on my phone a few moments later. The one with the courteously wrapped bad news. Hello, Lila. Just so you know, this year's Fairmont is completely booked. It will be a formal event with many guests arriving by plane. I hope it works for you. The emoji, the unspoken symbol of exclusion. Not a complete rejection. A courteous erasure only. I had previously seen this. Birthday invitations never came. During career announcements, my name was silently removed from group chats. I was never called a failure. They simply acted as though I didn't exist. I went back to my desk. The San Francisco skyline glowed in a misty haze as the rain pattered softly against the window of my 27th floor corner office. My screen still displayed the Bristol event contract. Olivia made the reservation via my concierge platform at the Fairmont Hotel. It had been flagged for approval by our assistant. For last-minute high-profile reservations, I personally approved a 30% premium. They were unaware that the same girl who used to work late into the night cleaning hotel rooms was now the CEO of Morgan Properties, which owns 15 historic buildings across Northern California. Unpredictable lost cause was what they continued to whisper. Let them speak. I never desired their acceptance. The night was mine. I walked over to the bookshelf and took out a tiny black frame that was hidden behind my business books. There was a battered plastic badge inside. Lila Housekeeping, San Francisco Grand Pacific Hotel, 2013. That night, I placed it prominently on my desk to remind myself why I had said yes to myself when everyone else had said no, even though I hadn't seen it in years. There are two kinds of people in this world, according to my mother. Those who inherit names and those who carry legacies. After supper, when the wine had relaxed her speech, she would whisper it. We were supposed to. Not as though everything he said was legally binding. When I first realized what my role was, I was 11 years old. The burden, not the name. They intended for me to join Morgan Capital as a junior associate by the time I turned 24. My name was already on the door of an office. Morgan Lila. Business plan. Less than a year passed. I asked the wrong questions, not because I didn't succeed. Inquiries concerning layoffs. No one provided an explanation regarding the outsourcing of janitorial staff or the long-term employees' disappearance of their retirement fund. Your thinking is too limited. From behind his desk of polished oak, my father let out a bark. You're blind? No, I replied. All I'm interested in is what people carry. Our last meaningful conversation ended there. Our relationship shifted to a quiet distance after that. Birthdays are disregarded, and texts are not read. I enrolled in and graduated first in my class from San Francisco State University's Hospitality Management program. Not one member of the family appeared. I was cleaning rooms at a dilapidated motel close to Market Street a year later. Each shift has 10 rooms, wet linen and towels that smelled like bleach. However, it was truthful. I started from scratch when building it. No freebies. Olivia sent me the wedding picture from her reception at that point. Everyone was glowing, smiling faces, sparkling champagne, and tailored suits. Even though I wasn't in the photo, I can still clearly recall that evening. A dishwasher was on break, and the DJ had left early, so I sat at a table close to the kitchen. Olivia explained that it was because I appeared more at ease there. A screenshot of a family group chat showed up in my inbox 2 days later. A picture with a caption of my old housekeeping badge. Cleaning rooms was her goal. She must have gotten what she wanted. They chuckled. Nobody raised their voice, not even Aunt Marlene. "You don't have to be like the others," said the aunt, who once gave me lemon drops in a whisper. I discovered that day, not all erasure is loud or furious. Sometimes there is silence. You sit far from the head of the table, get cropped out of enough pictures, leave off enough messages, and eventually start to question whether you were ever there at all. So I let it go. I started creating something that no one could ignore instead of waiting for them to notice me. With only 3 months' worth of savings, an old laptop, and 1 duffel bag, I left San Francisco. There was only a desperate need for silence, no grand scheme. Somewhere, no one gave a damn about my family, and my last name was irrelevant. In Woodstock, Vermont, I rented a tiny attic room in a dilapidated farmhouse. May and Frank, an elderly couple who operated it, paid me in cash to take reservations, change linens, and deal with latecomers. I was given room 9, which had a single bed, a skylight that framed the stars, and a low slanted ceiling. I adored it. That was the beginning of true solitude. The concept, not the company. I scrawled questions in a battered spiral notebook. What caused some visitors to return, while others disappeared? Why would a stranger feel noticed in a place they had never been to before, safe? I watched. I tried things out. A confused sign, a crooked bench, and a buzzing lamp. I made all the repairs without a budget. Just be mindful. Soon, guests started asking for Lila, not Miss Morgan, Miss Lila. When May and Frank decided to retire, I showed up with spreadsheets, market research, and a vision. I made an offer they accepted. I renamed it Maple House, my first property, my first real win. 5 rooms, no employees, just me. I poured my heart into it, scrubbing every floorboard, replacing musty curtains with linen panels, painting walls in soft shades of sage and cream on every nightstand. I left a handwritten card. "You're here now, you can rest." Guests remembered that line. I didn't hire a PR firm. I didn't need one. What did word of mouth do? No advertising effort could. Guests shared stories with their friends and raised awareness. Support came from attention. Not millions. Enough, but not overnight. I opened a second property, Maple Ridge, in less than 5 years. Then came a third, Maple Harbor, which was subtly superior to the larger resorts, despite being smaller. I gave them titles, respect, and fair pay when I promoted former housekeepers to site managers. No rigid uniforms, just dignified, real work. Subscribe right away if you think that starting over and quiet strength are powerful. You won't want to miss what comes next because Maple House's journey is just getting started. No hollow greetings, no phony smiles. Only those who proudly understood the true meaning of service. Never give in. By the time I turned 31, Maple House had subtly developed into a reputable brand of its own. Subtle luxury, careful consideration. No velvet ropes, no fountains made of marble. Only true dignity. Done correctly. I never signed my name on any of it, though. Under MP, the properties were listed. Morgan Holdings. Most people thought the CEO was a man who was ideal for me. I wasn't hiding, I was defending my creation. I was able to make something they couldn't destroy because of the silence. I kept my old plastic badge behind my desk, tucked away between vendor catalogs and fabric samples. The center of Lila's housekeeping was faded, cracked, and scratched. It should have been replaced long ago, but I wore it for a long time. Presented it simply, no glass black frame. Not affixed to any wall. Just for me, not for show. I held it some nights after countless spreadsheets and signatures. To remember the foundation, not to relive the suffering. I didn't construct Maple House to make a statement. I made it to fit in. One of Vermont's most upscale boutique hotels, Maple Harbor, was their choice for the family reunion. They didn't know. The corporate portal was used to make the reservation for Maple Harbor. In the family conversation, Olivia boasted about using her connections to get the desired location. "We're very fortunate," she said. The manager at the front desk informed her that although the owner was very private, everything was expedited as soon as they saw the family name. They were correct. I personally approved the linen color scheme, doubled the staff, upgraded their service-imported fresh flowers, and expedited it myself, naturally, digitally. Remember to subscribe if you experienced that silent moment of victory with me. When they eventually discover whose foundation they have been standing on, the next chapter begins. I hadn't signed a document in years, of course. When you leave, silence is the best defense. Not a single fingerprint. S. Bristow was listed as the host on the reservation, which was made using Morgan Hospitality's elite tier. The irony could have broken glass. Hannah, our guest relations manager, was reassigned to manage the account. Sophie was just another overly involved client who was fixated on spreadsheets and flower arrangements. She was intelligent, steady, and blissfully ignorant of family drama to Hannah. Sophie requested a custom floral arrangement with blue and white delphiniums and hydrangeas a week prior to the reunion. Hannah was summoned to my office. I told Hannah to be kind to them, but not gentle. Curious, she cocked her head. "What are you saying?" "Don't treat them like delicate glass. Simply serve them as they would like to be served." Slowly, a knowing smile crept onto Hannah's face as she nodded. I didn't have to explain everything to her. I sent just one message that evening. "You're coming, Janine and 2. Get there at 6:40. Avoid letting them in too soon." I saw the read receipt, but she didn't respond. That was sufficient. For the following 6 days, sleep was an uncommon visitor. I went over every aspect, including the menu options, signage, lighting cues, and room layout. I made one small adjustment at the last minute. Typically, a printed welcome note from the host family was placed in each guest suite. The card read this time, "We hope your visit serves as a reminder of your origins and what you never really lost." I didn't fully sign up, Layla. I didn't have to. On the day of the reunion, I didn't go through the front doors of the Grand. Rather, as I always did, I slipped in through the service entrance, passing carts full of fresh linens and trays of champagne glasses. Entering through the back door to enter the center of the house has a sacred quality. It helps you stay grounded. My outfit was navy, not wearing any jewelry. A hairpin. Quite nicely. Nothing. Called out for attention. For me, the room did that. They arrived in pairs at 6:45 p.m., followed by small groups. All the nervous sparkle of people who are desperate to be noticed, from loud laughter to firm handshakes. Sophie, too. Unaware that she was entering my home, she entered like a cruise director, grinning and waving. 10 minutes later, my father showed up with 2 strangers on either side. I instantly recognized sleepwatches, polished shoes, and finance types, the kind of men who use spreadsheets to build empires, but don't remember the janitors' names. From a tiny monitor hidden just past the kitchen hallway, I observed. Present, but hidden. I was not missed. The beauty of it was that no one searched for me anymore because I had been removed from their story so long ago. However, that was going to change. The ballroom lights dimmed just enough to silence the conversation and pique interest at precisely 7:15. Then the noise. 3 gentle chimes, slow and methodical. Sophie was in the middle of describing the personalized glassware. With a clipboard in hand and his customary cool professionalism, our guest services manager Everett came over to her. "The owner has asked that we start the welcome presentation right away." "Miss Bristow?" he said softly. The owner was perplexed by Sophie's blinks. "Well, I don't believe that's required. I have been working with your office for weeks, and we have already expressed our gratitude to the staff. Usually, the owner doesn't do these things." Everett remained silent. All he did was turn to the stage. The screen came to life. White and crisp with a soft navy background and a clean serif font it's hard to miss. Layla Morgan, the CEO and CEO of P. Morgan Holdings, founded Maple Harbor. The space grew cold. Sophie's float broke on the marble floor after slipping out of her hands. The back did not speak, but my father's jaw tensed. There was a murmur. "Hold on what?" above the ballroom. I stepped onto the landing. Baby dress poised and composed, hairpin back heels clicking softly. I was just like the woman they said I would never be. "Good night," I said in a calm, steady voice. "I'm aware that many of you were surprised to see me here tonight." "Hold on." When the table attempted to laugh, there was a nervous chuckle. "After all, you didn't invite me." Letting the words hang, I said. "However, I felt it was time for you to be properly welcome to Maple Harbor. After all, I let my gaze roam the crowd. You're in my house right now." Mouths parted, chairs shuffled. Rose whispers. Sophie moved forward apprehensively. The cheeks turned red. "Crazy! What are you doing, Lila?" she muttered. I looked into her cool, unblinking eyes. "Just like you taught me." Entering. "This hotel was reserved in your name," I said in a quiet but distinct voice. "You stated that the Bristow name was the reason the owner showed you courtesy, correct?" "That was accurate. I provided you with precisely what you requested, plus 20%. I spoke without flinching. "That was the triumph. You talked about me for years as if I were some far-off embarrassment. A dropout, a housekeeper, the girl who squandered her name. You said I vanished. I didn't go away, though. They simply stopped observing." I looked around the room bases, older, more rigid, motionless, and adorned with the fragile astonishment of being caught off guard. Their uneasiness was nothing new. The story had changed, so it was simply louder now. My dad got up. "Layla." His voice was unreadable and rough. "This place is yours," I responded, equally across 4 states. Adding that I own 17. He didn't respond. "Not necessary," I said. "I'm not here for applause. I came to give something back." I nodded slightly in Hannah's direction. 2 team members, each carrying svelte black folders, followed her forward. Inside were signed event contracts, one for each visitor. Layla Morgan is her name. They have a single note and itemized rates. Occasionally, the story you attempted to remove still ends up on the wall close to the rear. Janine laughed softly, knowingly. "Why didn't you use your full name from the beginning?" a gentle older man standing next to my father asked. I hesitated because I wanted to construct something before anyone made a decision about what it should be. As I moved away, he nodded quietly and with understanding in his eyes. It was the noise, not the light, that dimmed the ballroom. I didn't feel invisible for the first time in years. A diplomat was discreetly assigned to the VIP suite that Sophie had insisted on calling 4 times to secure. Arriving late, she was heavily pregnant. Naturally, Sophie's new room was still lovely, but it was the same kind of alley that I used to clean for $9.75 an hour. Aunt Janine came looking for me, but my father never did. After 11 p.m., she knocked on the door of my office. She wasn't invited in. She didn't inquire. All she did was give me an envelope. It contained a picture I hadn't seen in many years. I was on the back porch of the old Bristow house, maybe 8 years old. My father's hand rested lightly on my shoulder while he held a pitcher of lemonade in both hands. Not for anything noteworthy, but because I spilt the lemonade a few minutes later, I remembered that day, fearful of receiving a reprimand. Nobody spoke. They chuckled. I didn't feel like I belonged on the back again after that. You were woven into Janine's looping script. That was all. Before I could say anything, she was gone. I rode the elevator to the service floor the following morning. The housekeeping staff was getting started. Some gave a nod. A young woman grinned and then averted her gaze. I strolled over to the former supply room. Our break area is now. Near the rear wall was a coat rack. I took the framed name tag out of my bag. Lila, cleaning. Above the jackets, I hung it. No spotlight, no plaque, just a nail and some wood. Sophie left a note in her room later that day. "We did something that you didn't deserve." Although I didn't respond, the return address appeared on the reunion invitations sent out the following spring. Caldwell Miracle at ellen.group. Please subscribe and stick around if my story speaks to you. I didn't construct Maple Harbor to make a statement. I constructed it to provide a home for people like us. Tell me what they attempted to remove from you in the comments section below. Even if the voice is only a whisper, it still matters. If you have ever been forgotten or forgotten, know you are not by yourself. It matters how strong you are in silence. And your future is built with each little step you take. Together, we surpass everyone's expectations, so please subscribe and come along on this journey with me. Your assistance means the world to me.